Now, the Prime Minister said that in 2014 he was going to lead the way on women's equality. Can the Prime Minister tell us, how's that going in the Conservative Party?
First of all, let me just go back to the very important issue of flooding. I want to...
Order! Order! People getting very excited on both sides of the House. The question has been put. The answer must be heard. The Prime Minister.
I'm glad with Falkirk going on he's asking me about constituency selection, but let me briefly return to the issue of floods, because I want to just clarify this point about the funding. If you look at the period 2010 to 2014, when this government was in office, the funding was £2.4 billion, more than when Labour were in office. Secondly, because this will be of interest to a number of constituency MPs, obviously when it comes to funding, the Bellwin scheme also matters because it's the way the government supports local authorities. So let me tell the House that we will... I do think...
Order! Order! Mr. Ruane, you are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man! Prime Minister.
I know that many honourable members with flooded homes in their constituencies will want to hear about the Bellwin scheme because it's the way that central government helps local government. And so let me say, we will be paying local authorities 100% of eligible costs above the Bellwin grant threshold. We'll be extending the eligible... Mr. Speaker,
Order! However long this session takes, the questions will be heard and the answers will be heard. That is what order. That is what the public has a right to expect of this House. The Prime Minister.
They claim to be concerned, but then won't listen to the answers. We are extending the eligible spending period for Bellwin claims until the end of March 2014, recognising that the bad weather is continuing. And I can say to colleagues in Cornwall that we will make sure they don't suffer from having a unitary authority, which I know they believe is very important. Now, on the important issue of getting more women into public life, yes, this is fantastically important for our country because we will not represent or govern our country properly unless we have more women at every level in our public life and in our politics. Now, I am proud of the fact that as leader of the Conservative Party, the number of women MPs has gone from 17 to 48, but we need to do much more. I want this to go further. We've also seen more women in work than ever before, a tax cut for 11 million women. We've stopped pensions being discriminated against women, and we're putting women at the front of our international aid programmes. Those are the actions that we are taking. There is more to do, but we have a good record of helping women in our economy.
Mr. Speaker, I do have to say, a picture tells 1,000 words. This is a Prime Minister who said...
Order, I apologise for having to interrupt again. Members, calm yourselves. It is only just after midday. Many hours of the day remain. Don't destroy your systems by exploding. Mr. Ed Miliband.
Picture tells 1,000 words. Look at the all-male front bench raised before us. And he says he wants to represent the whole country. Mr. Speaker, I guess they didn't let women into the Bullingdon Club either. So there we go. Now, he said a third of his ministers would be women. He's nowhere near meeting the target. Half of the women he appointed as ministers after the election have resigned or been sacked. And in his cabinet, get this, Mr. Speaker, in his cabinet, there are as many men who went to Eton or Westminster as there are women. That is the picture. Does he think it's his fault that the Conservative Party has a problem with women?
He's interested in the figures. Let me give him the figures. Of the full members of the Cabinet who are Conservatives, 24%, a quarter of them are women. Not enough. I want to see that grow. Of the front bench frontbench ministers of the Conservatives, around 20% are women. That is below what I want to achieve in 33%. We are making progress and we'll make more progress. But let me make this point. This party is proud of the fact that we had a woman Prime Minister. To be fair to the Labour Party, to be...
Order! Mr. Gove. Order! Order! You really are a very overexcitable individual. You need to write out 1,000 times, "I will behave myself" at Prime Minister's questions. The Prime Minister.
To be fair to the Labour Party, they have had some interim leaders who are women, but they have this habit of replacing them with totally ineffective men.
Of course, Mr. Speaker, he mentions Lady Thatcher. Unlike him, she was a Tory leader who won general election. And look, Mr. Speaker, I noticed the member for Harwich and North Essex in his place, and he wrote a very interesting article recently. He said, "We men are all guilty of such unconscious slights to women." The Prime Minister recently greeted a leading high-profile businesswoman at a reception by asking, "Where's your husband?" Now, Mr. Speaker, that says it all. And the reason representation matters is because it shapes the policies a government introduces and how they impact on women in the country. And he is failing women. Can he say why, for the first time in 5 years, has the gap between men's and women's pay increased?
Prime Minister!
The fact is there are more women in work in our country than ever before in our history. We've seen a tax cut for 12 million women, a pension increase that is benefiting women, tax-free childcare that will help women who want to go out to work, more support on childcare. Now, he talks about MPs and candidates. He might enjoy this one. The candidate for Wythenshawe, the Labour candidate for Wythenshawe, has made an endorsement today. He has endorsed Miliband. David Miliband.
Mr. Speaker, if I were him, I would not be talking about candidates this week of all weeks. Because what is the Tory party doing? Removing one of their most senior women and seeking to replace her with an old Etonian. It says it all about the Conservative Party. And he didn't answer the question. I'll tell him why the gender pay gap is increasing, because the minimum wage has been losing value, because the growth of zero-hours contracts, and the problem women have accessing childcare. He promised to modernise his party, but he's going backwards. He runs his government like the old boys' network. That's why he's failing women across his party and across the country.
Isn't it interesting that with 6 questions and an invitation to condemn the strike today, not a word? Isn't that the truth?